Hey everyone, thank you for joining me with my presentations. I hope that it will be interesting for you, and also I hope that there will be like some new things that you can learn. Of course, the topic that I'll be talking, lights, it's a very, very huge topic. So I won't be going into a lot of detail since this is hours and hours of talk. But we will go through some of the things that I've encountered in my work and how most effectively and easily you can create something which is with a very nice result and from there further improve it. So first, a few words about me. As I was introduced, I'm called Stefan Ivanov. Originally from Bulgaria, and I've been working in game industry a little bit more than 10 years now, and at the moment I'm working as a technical artist. But before I got to a technical artist, you can see that I went from game designer, 3D artist. I also have interest in music and yeah, many different things. So all of these things I've learned in my experience, I can say that are coming today for helping me with tech art. Currently I'm working at Sperasoft Krakow. We are doing code development and are helping some of our partners you can see on the right side. And it's mainly AAA development. I can say that the things that I will show in the presentation helped me a lot and were a lot used into some of the projects that I've worked in the company. And I can also say that the scenes that you see on the presentations, they are not from the company, they are specially made for you. Put some extra effort. Okay. Quick overview of some of the things that I will start talking about. So, light is something which is around us longer than humans existed. And yeah, everyone has seen every day lots of light examples. And when you're showing as an artist to someone your scene, and they immediately, if there is something off with your lights, or they will immediately see this, because it's something that we are so used to seeing it that you subconsciously already know what's wrong. But of course, only people which are more familiar can give you this positive feedback of what exactly is the issue. But anyone, and this is actually a very good tip, that if you are now starting and you are working as a 3D artist or as a light artist, to show some of your work to friends. And I'm sure that if there is something very wrong with your scene, they will immediately say that this feels weird, or that they will immediately point to some region which doesn't feel right. So, going in the past, as I said, light is something which has been around us for a very, very long time. So, I first want to introduce a little bit some classical artists and what they were doing. And later on, I will go to how all the techniques that they were using centuries ago can be used, and how I'm implementing all these techniques and things that I learned in my studies for all of my art. So first thing, all the classical arts, by the way, are going to be from a French artist that I really like him. So this scene is called the Oath of Horatis. And as you can see, there's a father that he's sending the story behind it. Is this father, he's sending his 3 sons to a battle. The kids and the women, they're crying for them, are they gonna return, and so on. But the interesting part is how the artist is playing with the composition elements here, and also how he is using the light in the scene to enhance everything and make it more understandable. To help you a little bit what I mean, I created some guides. First, with the blue elements, with the blue lines, you can see I marked some of the scene elements that the artist is using to guide your eye. There are a couple of different parts of the painting which are the main focus and which are the areas that the artists want you to concentrate. And funny enough, when there's a person or there's like some creature or something like this on your artwork, usually we as people, this is like subconscious thing that we are going for. We first go for faces, and this is like the first thing that somebody sees in a picture if there's something like that on it. So you can see that he has a couple of areas. They are all like very well lit, and also these points of interest, they all have some person there with some kind of an emotion. And the rest of the elements of the scene make it so that your eye is being guided through it in a way that it circles around these points of interest. This pretty much is a very important thing for us as an artist, because if your painting or your artwork is showing, let's say you have a person at the very right end of the painting and he is looking outwards from it, this will immediately subconsciously guide the viewers to somebody else's artwork. And back in the good old days, since all of these art pieces they were displayed in different houses or next to different artwork or different art pieces, so artists, they were using all these tricks to make people stare as long as possible at their painting. We're going for the next one. Here, I picked this one because the light setup, as you see from the previous one, which was a little bit more lit, this one has a little bit more harsh shadows and also has a lot more contrast. This is created and used as a technique to make the viewer feel that it's a little bit more dramatic. And this is why, like, the higher contrast and the darker parts of the scene puts this feeling of inside of you when you're watching it that this scene is not very pleasant. Not that seeing somebody drink poison is probably not very pleasant. Again, I marked a couple of the different elements. You can see on the top left corner that I again marked an arc. This was a very used element in modern, and not only modern, but also in 16th, 17th century art. And it's a very good way to close your scene and to create some kind of a frame. I can quickly say that, have you guys played Warcraft? I'm talking about Warcraft, not the World of Warcraft. Yeah, if you remember, there was a very awesome cinematic there where Arthas is coming back to see his father, and he's passing through these halls, and all of these halls there, he's walking under arcs. So the guys that were working on the cinematic, they were using the same type of technique for closing their frames, and yeah, even nowadays it works very well. On the next one, it's from the same artist, but here I want to show you a little bit more how he's planning from the very beginning. This is one of his final artworks that was never finished, but here you can see, even from the very beginning, when he's creating his paintings, they already have some guides, and you can see their arms, how they are pointing, the position of the legs, for example, and all these key elements that are creating like one frame and keeping the viewer's eye into the same picture. And especially it's very well visible here on this area, where you can see that there was planned to be something like a tree or some finishing ornament on that side, where we'll as well, like half arc, will guide the viewer's eye upwards. Let's go to modern days. This is one of the scenes that I made for the presentation. I will be showing 3 different light setups with the same scene, and how just changing the direction of the light, a little bit changing the number of the lights as well, and also a little bit tweaking the final image in post for to create different moods. First, I'll go through the scene design, because as I showed you from David, he is using lots of scene elements for creating his base composition, and later on the light is just complementing those elements and creating additional interest points. This is the so-called gray box design, as lots of you I bet know. So I started planning this scene in the very beginning, and I knew that I wanted to have kind of corridor with some a little bit more leftovers, like let's say this is some corridor behind a theater or just in some building which is not used that much, and also wanted to have like some a little bit more interesting shapes there. And I went for, in the beginning, as you see, with these drawers, which are like a little bit more box-wise, and I decided to have these chairs and lights which are with more circular design. So I already had some idea. To be honest, at this point, I really didn't know where the whole scene is going and where I want to go in terms of mood, because it was something which kind of on the way of while making the scene. I decided. So first, I started changing it a little bit. I saw that the lower right corner, it's at first point very empty. Second, I need to add some elements there that will help me close my whole frame, and also can help me block a little bit the light from which is coming from the windows on the right side. On the next one, since we already had this blocking element here, I was wondering what can I change on the far end of the corridor. Initially, I was thinking to actually extend it and just make a very long, not lit corridor, but decided, okay, that's gonna be a little bit trickier after that if I want to create a little bit more different scenes. So I decided to go and close it with a curtain. Curtain is a perfect tool for hiding everything that you don't need in the scene. So it's very easily created. This is just some quick Mach simulation of physics, and boom, you get an element to block everything. You can also see on the left side that I a little bit changed the position of this drawer, but I was still actually not happy with it, because it was taking too much of the whole composition, and it was not really contributing a lot to it, because here I already had the idea that the primary light source for the image will be from the right side, from the windows, and having main light from there would put almost the whole plane, the front plane of this drawer lit, which would make it very hard, I would say, to close my composition on that side. So I decided to change it with something a little bit more interesting. It has more different materials, which was very useful at the end when I wanted to already make the scene with textures and to put all the materials and everything, because when you're having only materials that are not very shiny, not very reflective, it starts slowly to lose your audience. So I decided to use this old projector that already actually started making sense for me, because as I told you in the beginning, I was planning to have this as some small corridor behind an old theater, so this projector just came perfectly there. And also, as its geometrical shape, it was very nice for guiding the viewer's eye. If I lit this front leg, lit everything to the front, and the other two legs leave it there in a little bit more dark. Light setups. This is the first one that you saw. It's a very, very simple light setup. As I said, the things that I'll be showing you have the idea to show that, yeah, with light you can go crazy, and you can put lots of different lights on your scene, and yeah, have very awesome result. Or you can go sometimes very simple, like if you're just have to create a scene to pitch an idea, or you want to create this scene to just quickly test some mood or create some kind of an atmosphere or something. And also you can create good quality final images with very simple light setups, if the whole scene and light makes sense. So here I'm using only one directional light, which is the main light source from outside, and I have two additional spotlights from the top. So they are just adding a little bit more detail and a little bit closing this frame from the upper side. I marked again what was my goal. I wanted to have my interest point in the middle, since I don't have any characters that the viewer will go automatically to their face. I had to make decided that these chairs are interesting enough as an element to be like my main thing in the scene, and I started adjusting the rest of the elements so that your eye goes around this element. Moods. This is something which, after finishing the scene that you saw, I wanted to make and show that by keeping the same elements and just changing the light setup, you can create a few different feelings of the same scene. And this is very nice and useful, as I said, if you are concepting or pitching an idea, because you can have an idea of some interior or some space or some level for your game, and then by creating a couple of very quick light setups, you can use this to see if your idea works. And as I said, show it to a couple of friends, they will tell you this sucks, no, this is super awesome, and so on and so forth. This is the second light setup. You can see that I kept one of the lights on the top, but for this one I had the idea that maybe behind the camera there is a door or something like that. So this door is open, there is a person or somebody which is entering through this place, which has still some light on, but doesn't look like very habited. It's a little bit abandoned. And on the next one, I really wanted to make just one light setup. So I decided that the best thing to do for this scene will be just to put a flashlight at the very back. Of course, this flashlight, it's so bright that, yeah, in real life, probably you will never get such a flashlight. But you can see that it already created a little bit more of a mood which is of abandonment, or that there is like some kind of a mystery. I also put a little bit more green to the final frame. So this created this feeling of a little bit more abundant place. This is actually a trick that, for example, in cinema they are using very often, putting like a little bit colder values, like bluish or greenish, so that you can feel a little bit more depressed. These are all the variations. And now let's go to Unreal. So, as game developers, when we are lighting our scenes, we have two ways to go. One is we can decide to go for baked lights. Second one is to go for dynamic lights. My idea for the presentation is to tell you a little bit more for both ways, and also to talk a little bit about how both, what you need to have in mind in terms of performance, what it will impact, how much it can increase your scope of work for your project. Because backlights are awesome. They are, especially if you are talking about Unreal, compared to dynamic lights, they have GI, or as guys from Epic are saying, they have this like bouncing light, and you're getting lots of extra details, and also some of the colors from the scene. And yeah, it basically makes your whole scene and everything look more realistic and feel much better. Unfortunately, there is not only good things about it. One thing is that you need to spend more time creating your assets, like creating a second channel for baking all these light maps. And also, if you're creating a mobile game, and especially for mobile games, having not very huge in size mobile game is, I would say, essential. So having baked light maps, you need to keep in mind that these light maps, they are increasing the size of your final game by how many megabytes it will be, and also that when the level will be loading, these are additional textures which are going to be loaded to the scene. Here I want to show a little bit an example for what do I mean by global illumination, and that the lights are bouncing. So you can see two examples, and on the left one, the room, although that from the light source there is enough light coming, it's completely dark, and on the right side, because of the bouncing lights, we get a little bit more lit environment. The second part, as I said, is about the colors which it's picking. So we have these red carpets here, and you can see on the left side that the columns, they are picking a little bit from the carpet color. So this is also one of the features that you get when you have global illumination. Here, very quick tip for your light maps. As I said, it's very important when you're having a baked scene. You need to create your second channel for baking. You need to be sure, and usually like the best practice, as you can see on the image on the top. You need to be sure and take care that you have enough light map resolution through your whole scene, so that everything is consistent and everything looks good. And there are some objects that you can, for example, create a little bit lower resolution, but overall it's an important thing to keep the same light map density through your whole level, so everything looks better and like from the same universe. This is for the light map channel. I put this light because this is a very good example of not very well optimized light maps. So here for the light maps, important to, especially if you're doing a mobile game and you really are looking to get the maximum in terms of megabytes and not to waste anything. It's yeah, very important to have very well packed light maps. So you use the most of this space, and also you can use very well the whole baking process and this texture. Dynamic lights. We don't have the problem for creating the second channels, but they are a lot more heavy on performance. Usually for mobile games, I've seen that you can use few, from my experience, dynamic lights, and your scene can look good and can have good performance. Of course, if you're developing for PC or console, this is something which is not bothering you as much, but it's still something which you need to keep in mind. And for dynamic lights, I want to go quickly through the scene that I set it up. It's inside Unreal. So I wanted to make an exterior scene, again with a very simple light setup. And in this one I decided to use a few characters there to make it a little bit more interesting. So, here I'm not going to go as much on details as in the interior scene. I am not going to show you through the whole process. I will just quickly talk through it. So I created all these elements as rocks, trees, and different parts that you can see, which in one or another way, they, by constructing the scene, they're helping, again, with the same thing to guide the viewer's eye and to create this part of the frame, which is the most interesting part. And this is, of course, our main character with one enemy that's at the moment attacking him. And as a setup, it's a very, very simple thing. I have my main light source at the back, which is directional light. It lights most of the scene. I have a couple of complementary lights on each of the characters. This is to create this rim light on them so that they can be a little bit separated from the background. And also, since all the light was coming from the front and was pointing towards the camera, my character, which was right next to the camera, was very dark from the backside, so I added one fake light there so that it can imitate a little bit some bounces from the back, or just to make it that it's not one black smudge there on the front. And that's pretty much everything that yeah, I have in my presentation for you today. So all questions are welcome. Hopefully it was useful for you guys.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I forgot in the beginning to mention that for the best question, there will be a prize, a good, really good power bank, and it's lying over there. So, questions? Yeah, no, you have to come, please, unfortunately.
Spare me.
Did the sounds of the Horatio return sound safe and sound from the battle?
Oh, did they return safely?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Oh, you don't know.
Yeah, of course. As a main character, you need to kill as many as possible. So yeah, no, I'm I'm sure that they returned safe and sound.
Right, cool. Thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, second one is coming. Think about others. Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
When you are working with backlights, you have to bake them when making changes to the scene. And do you have some pipeline to maybe work with dynamic lights and then change to backlights in the process and have the same result or as close as you can with dynamic lights as you will have with backlights?
That's a nice question. So usually when it depends a lot on what exactly I'm working on. If I'm working on a static frame just to show a nice picture or just to use it as a concept, usually I start with the light setup in a very early stage, like when I have some gray box design of the level, and this helps me make very quick iterations to it and check my ideas. Of course, if I'm working for a scene which is supposed to be in a game and you have to walk around and you have a lot more possibilities to do, I usually go through setting up something very quick with dynamic lights and checking how the idea works, and later on, because in Unreal you can also use stationary lights, and for example, if you're going for baking but you also need some dynamic lights for your characters, you can go for stationary lights, and it's with dynamic lights you get a nice quick result to see how your light setup is going and if everything is nice as smooth. And then if you want to go for baked ones, you can always just easily switch everything and bake it. But yeah, I would say that best practice so far for me, and what I'm trying to do is usually to already have at least some kind of an idea when I'm creating the scene, either for game or just for a static shot, and already have a little bit in my head some planning in terms of what do I want to achieve in a mood, where the characters are going to be able to walk, and what are the important parts of this whole scene.
Okay, and the second question, if I may, when you have a glowing object that you can use emission to bake lights from it, or you can use the normal light or combination of both, do you have some ways that you prefer?
You mean objects which are with emissive materials on them, right?
Yeah. But maybe as well for the panels at the ceiling that you don't really need the light, but you want to do this emissive fill, not volumetric, but using emissive. I suppose not volumetric, but emissive in this case.
Mm-hmm. Well, usually for objects which have some kind of emissive material or emissive parts from them, there's like a material function that you can create in Unreal, which you can later on, if you're baking the light, you can pretty much include this emissive part into your bakes. And also, if you want to use them in your volumetric, like to affect your volumetric fog into the scene, you can create like a custom shader for that, and pretty much use it or not use it depending on if this really helps you somehow enhance the mood there, or it's just annoying and you want to completely remove it. So yeah, there's I would say quite a lot of different ways to proceed with these kind of things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other questions? We still have some time.
Do you have any tips for working with skylight on outdoor scenes?
From where to start?
I don't know, maybe it should be darker than default, or...
So usually for working with skylight, not most of the time, I would say all the time, I'm not using capture scene. So I'm not using this default capture of the skylight, because I would say it's not as accurate if you are using an HDRR. So I usually prefer to use HDRs there because it gives you a little bit more accurate colors and more accurate colors, especially in the bouncing of lights. And even if you're using this as on a dynamic scene, you can still create like the lower hemisphere, for example, from the whole skylight to be a little bit darker, or let's say you're creating a forest, so you can go with something dark greenish, so it will get some of those lights there. So yeah, if I can give one general tip, this will be that with having like some custom HDR created for the purposes of the scene will be probably the best solution for it.
Okay, so because I was thinking that it's problematic, so thank you.
Any other questions? More questions? No? Nothing. No more contestants for the prize. All right. This was Stefan Ivanov from Sperasoft. Thank you very much.
Thanks.